there'll be an opportunity to be able to share what those methods might be.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to make 3 points about that from, I think, an equity perspective. One is to echo Bill's comments in that I think this process is doing that, is beginning to do it. One of the things that came up in our discussions was a real sense of wanting whatever TPAs are chosen to be successful. Just getting more development and housing and mixed-use projects in transit corridors is going to contribute to opportunity and equity in the region. So that was one of the clear priorities. But the second thing is a real recognition that we need to vastly expand the investment in our transit system overall to really reach the vision that I think we'd all like to see. And that's going to come through a set of other processes that is about getting more resources, essentially, and that's, you know, federal, state, as well as local. And so I think there is some concern about, you know, there's discussion about a Measure B income or a sales tax measure to try and raise additional revenues for that, and what can be done at a state and federal level to invest in transit as what you're saying, an economic development driver. The third point is really an indicator issue. One of the, I was thinking about that as I saw your presentation, in breaking out the distinction between maintenance costs for roads and building new capacity. And one of the biggest challenges we have in transit is federal funding requiring only capital expenditures and not operational expenditures. And there's a real sense we have in building roads that contributes to economic development. We need to move goods back and forth, and, you know, people need to get back and forth. And I think we need to instill that sense of facilitating the efficiency of people moving via transit systems is critical. And that requires investment in operations as much as new capital expenditures. So I was just actually a suggestion that I thought about today is to break out the distinction between what we're spending in the MTP on capital expenditures for transit and what is operational cost would help us, I think, to think a bit about that.
Stacy, you want in on this question? Okay.
Sure. A few things come to mind. I think ideally one of the greatest outcomes would be a broader acceptance of where the market is moving in terms of what type of product housing we're going to need, and there's going to be a yearning for over the next 20 or so years. One of the great challenges, I think, and Mary Sater, who I saw in the room earlier, invited some of us, all of us, to attend a presentation at ULI, and it was focused on financing of infill development. And unless there's capital to actually provide funds for this type of development to occur, it's going to be very difficult, in the same way that if the regulatory environment is not aligned, if the banking environment is not aligned, we will have a difficult time. So getting a broader appreciation of where is the market going, what kind of product are we going to be looking for, and helping to influence some of those decisions, I think, is very important. And I'll be honest, this is a bottom line type of issue, but I have to believe that if we are able to successfully do infill development, the economics of impacts to natural resources goes way down. You know, when we're looking at potential areas where these TPAs, be it the 5 or the overall, you know, gray and darker gray map that Joe presented earlier, if many of those are infill type, or most are infill type development, the cost of impacts has to go way down. And from a development perspective, that's very important. You know, impacting in vernal pools in our region, or impacting just at the landscape level as it pertains to Swainson hawk or whatever type of species or plants you might be thinking about, is very high. And so being able to show that as a market, as an economic indicator of infill versus greenfield development, I think is very important. And I think we also have to, and we're doing such a great job, SACOG's doing such a great job with the rural urban connection strategy of looking at the economic benefit of not impacting that prime ag land, those rural lands, that if we are not able to successfully incentivize infill development, that is where our footprint is headed. And it's not to say that we're not going to go out there eventually or to a certain degree, but the economic benefit of preserving that ag land needs to be highlighted as well.
We're spending time, most of the energy in this project is, at least the TPA part of it, is focused around defining success. What does a good TPA look like? How do we know one when we have it? And we're purposely trying to be broad-based and look at that question from a whole variety of different angles so we don't leave any issue out. But let me run around the other side of that issue to the potential downsides. Are you hearing anything, and some of you have intimated this a little bit, and Adrian did in his slideshow. He didn't actually put the G word on the screen, gentrification, but you can sometimes have rising property values is both a good and can be a bad. The price of success can have some difficult side effects. Are you hearing anything in your discussion, or again, just your professional expertise to the table, of what the boogeymen are out there? What's something bad that could happen in these TPAs that we want to make sure that we consider how to avoid as we do these planning efforts? What's the dark side look like here? Not that Julia didn't take up enough
Exactly.
in this meeting, but
I'll venture in there and turn it just a little bit, because I think one of the areas of consensus in our conversation back on the 13th that I thought was, we reached very quickly. And there was a lot of strong support for, so to me that's a strong signal, is that one of the criteria for the economic development filter is having a jurisdiction be the champion for that particular transit priority area and be a catalyst.
Right.
And so contrast that with being simply the home for it. We think that is really critical because you're going to be challenged by local ordinances, by local specific plans. You're going to be challenged by a host of issues that will come up, regulatory and otherwise. We also know that whether it's a city or a county, that political leadership is absolutely critical towards successful economic development. And there's reams of evidence that it really takes true, committed political leadership to drive economic prosperity. So I'm answering it in the affirmative, but I think it's obvious what I think the risk is here, is that if we land one of these in a community that might receive it lukewarm, or that we lack identified champions that will truly push through barriers, then I think we're going to have challenges.
Okay, good, excellent point.
I'm going to make 3 points again. People who know me well know that my world only works in threes. I can't do top tens because I just can't keep it all in my mind. So the first one, definitely investment without displacement is a really critical principle. I was surprised that it didn't come up more, and I think that's a statement about our current economic environment, that I think investment is a good thing in any case.
But how could rising property values possibly
happen? Right. But clearly that's on the mind, and we need to keep that. I would say the two that were expressed more directly actually don't have so much to do with a particular project necessarily, although I think it's linked with that, but are sort of the broader questions about how equity is incorporated into the processes and planning of that. And one of the questions is I use the term tokenism, right? The notion that there's all this consultation, tremendous amount of expertise and energy and work going into thinking about equity indicators and going into this process, but then sort of waiting to see, is that really going to make a difference?
Does anybody care?
Yeah, does anybody care? Or is it just going to be, whatever's pet project and the same processes underway? And I think there was a recognition that a lot of that issue will be determined in the action plan and actual development process, not necessarily in the selection of TPAs.
Right.